You look at same store sales growth of Vishal Mega Mart. The revenue is growing at overall growing at 26%. Same store sales growth is also growing 14%. And they open like 50-55 stores every year. DMart is 70-80% of the business is FMCG.
And out of 80%, 60% is food. We sold the company for 70 crores to TPG and Shriram Group, okay, in 2011. TPG and Shriram Group must have professionalized it, gotten in Mr. Kapoor, all of that from 2011 till they sold it to Kedara in 2018 for 2,300 odd crores.
Even for a consumer tech company, the product UI UX, like what is the consumer going to experience on the app, that I think still continues to be held by the founder. And I think operators now will operate. For you to assume that the operator will take a gut call कि यार कर लेते हैं customer को अच्छा लगेगा, वो नहीं कर पाते क्योंकि they have been trained to operate with objective principles. There is a growing trend of people now being visible in the public domain a lot more than before. Is that driving more apparel consumption? सिटी MobiKwik का क्या सीन है क्या
4,300 crores market cap.
So they are now at 500 million market cap, huh? Double हो गया basically.
Yeah.
So they are back to their real valuation. That basically
मतलब last round तो 800-900 पे हुआ है.
वो छोड़ दे. Let's assume that was overvalued, but ideally they could have gone IPO at 500 million also. नहीं क्या?
That was we were debating ना कि ऐसा क्यों करा उन्होंने. मतलब was it lack of demand or they were just trying to get it like no, we don't want to give any chance. तीसरी बार attempt कर रहे हैं. Let's go out and just do it.
I'm hearing that there are gatekeepers to IPOs, which are, I mean, usually used to be investment bankers, but now it's supposed to be the DII, the mutual fund industry, which is saying we are the price makers and this is the price that we can make if you want to go IPO. And maybe that's what they got as an indication from the large size DIIs. Because see, you can't do a 500 crore IPO with only retail investors. And if you need good DIIs, you have to maybe take the price that they give. Like I was hearing that even for Swiggy IPO, the FIIs were okay at maybe a little higher price, but the DIIs were very clear at that the listing, like the IPO price has to be 390. The rumor is that the FIIs were okay at 430, 440 also. So there seems to be a price sensitivity in DIIs considering they have 1.5 lakh crore cash, and I mean they are the ones who will also support the IPO post listing, right? Like if tomorrow peak 15 holds whatever 16-17% in the business, that is a large block, right? At 500 million, that's still what?
80 million.
हाँ, अब 80 million खरीदने के लिए तो you need a DII, right?
Yeah. I also feel founders.
Why would you do I think they did a 500 crore IPO.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you do a smaller one?
Cash. But
Raising cash was also enough float,
like
no?
20% dilution, na?
Shantanu is right. One is float. Second is, see, if you're talking to a ICICI or a SBI mutual fund was 1.5 lakh crore, he'll be like, boss, 20-30 crore se main kya karunga karke? It won't move the needle for me. So this is the price. This is my minimum check size, which effectively takes the IPO through, no? If you think about it.
Yeah.
So if you have 5 or 10 DIIs who will underwrite 500 crores for you, and who are saying this is the price, that's the way to maybe let the IPO happen. And post listing, okay, it's 20% dilution, but if you think about it, it's 100x from 100% up from the IPO price, and I'm sure.
And also, MobiKwik, it's been 14 years in the business. That business was like wanting another lease of life. It was not like booming as a business.
Number तो ठीक है, 1,000 crore revenue, profitable, seems like a good business, नहीं क्या?
But they were the first ones to go. They were the first wallet in the country, right? Imagine Paytm came after that, and Paytm is like multi-x size of them, right? So market is saying that okay, subscale by far, there is a number one player who has also gone through these ups and downs. वो वाला थोड़ा factor भी है. I think they didn't want to miss the bus this time, for sure.
I also think another thing with founders valuing conservatively, especially after the Paytm Nykaa days now. I think is that they prefer like the public markets to rally the stock up. That's a better story in general, internally from a motivation standpoint, just generally from a uh, sentiment standpoint, then kind of having a high listing price which might be kind of aggressive, and then becoming a lot more vulnerable to ups and downs, which is what happened with Paytm and Nykaa a lot in the first couple of years. So
Yeah, I think it's very hard to know the real price as a venture-backed founder, private. See, founders who have built in private for years really find it hard to understand how public markets work. Even if you understand how public markets work, it's a completely different ecosystem. Like we spend years and years meeting other venture-backed private company founders as well as VCs and Ps, etc. And that's the network where reality and perception, there are two tracks, but at least it's with the private guys. Now, if you're to do that again with the entire public market ecosystem, that's going to take a lot more years. I just think sometimes if you have a great CFO, a great IR person, maybe the right investment bankers, there is a possibility where you could get a better price as well. But I think you're right. In the end, kitna hi optimize karoge? Maybe just getting listed was the goal here, and they said just get it done. Like I'm sure if Swiggy really pushed through, because even Swiggy is at 600, right? I mean, they listed at 400, and it's a $15-16 billion company. They went IPO at $10 billion. It's a massive $5 billion of value they left on the table, if you think about it. Now, I think that if you go back 2 months before the IPO, there were talks from Swiggy that our potential listing price should be 15 billion. Now, why they went at 10 is, I think, market forces. And if the market forces behave that way, and especially at that size, right? If you want $1 billion IPO to go through, you need the large guys to back you, and you need the large guys to say that, boss, मैं डाल रहा हूँ 200 crore type से. तो 200 crore डालने वाले लोग अगर बोलेंगे बॉस यही प्राइस है, तो यही प्राइस है, क्या करोगे? I think it's very much like when ZERP was at its peak. Entrepreneurs had the upper hand because there was a lot of money and entrepreneurs could ask whatever valuation they want. While there is a lot of money in capital markets, I think it's very clear. Maybe that was post the learning of the stock crashes that happened for the 2021 and 2022 IPOs. The mutual fund industry has smartened up and said, boss, while we really like your business and we see potential upside, there is almost like some risk on predictability and compounding and consistency. We would rather be conservative on pricing tech IPOs or venture-backed IPOs. And if you do well, great. But we would love to be as conservative as possible because we have been bitten once before.
Yeah.
And now that has started happening, I'm sure it's just becoming the norm. They're like, boss, hum to yahi pricing denge karke. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating, just to be very clear.
But looks like
somebody's hearing and saying,
one day, you get these 50, 60, 70% jumps. So it looks like that, the supply of this money is controlling the price that, we haven't made
and it's
returns. We ever, both in Nykaa and Paytm and some of the early ones, which were priced like supremely well. They didn't make returns. So now they are very sure that, we want to make like returns day one.
Even if they don't make returns, because see, a mutual fund who's put 100 crores can't get liquidity at this price. There will always be some discount to current price because sometimes it's driven by pent-up retail demand or people who couldn't get into the IPO will start buying. Plus they have lock-ins as well, right? People who have subscribed to the IPOs before. But more critically, I think one is you're right, they have overcorrected. Second, now that they know that this is okay, and I'm sure this is a norm because every IPO is popping, right? Like, whether it's a 500 crore IPO or a $1 billion IPO, everything is up 50%. And by the way, if you look at AWFIS, right, that's like up 70-80% since IPO. That was also a venture-backed company. And that price is not just a bubble price because there was a there was a block deal right now where Peak 15 and ChrisCap sold to DIS again at current market price at about $700, which is 80% higher than the listing price, which happened like less than 6 months back. So clearly, if every IPO is getting liquidity at these prices, I think they're just making hay while the sun shines and saying if we have if we have the capital to make sure that your IPO goes through, price to hamara hoga karke. And it's typical economics, right? I mean, whoever has the upper hand will always try to make a little extra in that sense.
Would we officially begin or?
Welcome to episode 6, guys. But you know what? Honestly, I think while we have kind of started off with a continuation of MobiKwik, which we discussed in some depth last time, today we have something really cool, and Chirag's going to run us through something for episode 6. So yeah, welcome.
Okay, thanks, Shantanu. I think we are amidst, in between a series of IPOs. There's another interesting one which happened yesterday. I don't know for what reason. It's not, outside of numbers, but at least I didn't find a lot of exuberance amongst us founders. But this is a company which is, very different, from today's world, wherein we are talking about founders' mindset. Founders leading. There is this Brian Chesky video which keeps doing the rounds, and this is a company which is run by private equity guys, right? Fully. Yeah. So that's very different. We are today running in a world where we are like every day, every third message on WhatsApp group is about quick commerce, and this is a company about organized retail. So we are today discussing Vishal Mega Mart, which got listed yesterday. Started, or the IPO was at 33,000 crores. Again, got a pop. Now it's trading at 50,000 crores as a market cap. And very, very interesting company from multiple angles. But before we go there, in terms of doing a little bit of deep dive, by any chance, any of you have been to a Vishal Mega Mart store?
Bombay Shaving Company is now listed in Vishal Mega Mart as of 1 month back. So we have done the recce's significantly, and it's a very unique retail environment. I must say.
I have no clue. I've never seen a store also. Bombay mein hai kya store?
70% stores are in tier 2, but there will be some stores in tier 1. But primarily there are tier 2, tier 3 organized retailer.
Very interesting.
And I have been to their store. They are one of our clients, or at least one of the companies is one of our clients. And I've been to their stores. So their stores are, we are all used to, or today's world is about looking up to Zudio, which has been scaling up really well, is trendy. But this is very functional designed stores, right? If you go there, you will not find that jazz, new look, trendy, luxurious feel which you get in a Zudio. It's very functional. You will feel like you have entered a efficient or a Indianized version of Costco. That kind of a view you will get. Interesting. But by the way, that takes me to we have all become used to shopping online. Where do you guys shop? Do you guys go to any of these organized retailers these days to, let's say, shop clothes, or is it all online?
I do think that clothes, for example, I'm not a clothes buyer, clearly. I have been wearing the same uniform for ASYMMETRIC for the last 4 episodes. So clearly my variety is not there. But I do feel like if I see my parents or see my friends, family, I think the discoverability of a large format retail store has not been recreated either online or in general trade in any meaningful way. Those large aisles, the ability to see multiple categories in huge shelves which are 3, 4, 5 tier, big packs. I don't know whether you've seen like a Maggi 1 kilo pack or a detergent 10 liter pack. You can't understand the category fully until you go there. So I think large format retail will have a place, especially from a discoverability standpoint. And new launches. For us, example, new launches, we genuinely believe a large format retail is the best place to kind of get it in the hands of the customer.
Revant, what's your go-to? I'm sure we don't.
Yeah, I don't shop.
All three of us don't go shop for ourselves.
I mean, you were on the WhatsApp group where recently you saw the fight that we had. So there's a group that we have, Shantanu, where all the people who are going on holiday at the year end, and Aarti was like, "You don't have good clothes to wear on a holiday." So she was obviously, just shopping in Myntra, and every day some parcel would come and she's like, "Try this on, size ठीक है नहीं है, return करना है नहीं करना है करके." So there is a fridge पे Little Joy's का, we have a like a to-do list kind of thing. Uspe Arnav wrote, "Mama gone crazy with shopping." Oh my God, smiley, smiley. Because every day evening he would see like, kuch aa raha hai, and Aarti's like, try this. And that's the only discussion we're having for the last 5 days. So that's the reality for me. So I mean, I have shopped offline, but it's more like, you're at a mall and you see something like, chalo le lo karke types, right? Otherwise, if you have to do it, largely as a timed event, I think to the convenience over discovery versus price, etc. I think convenience is winning, at least for where we are, which is let's say top 1% of the country. Largely is going towards convenience. I mean, if you see Myntra's results, I don't know if you saw FY24, only vertical retailer to be profitable, of course after Nykaa, but it's commendable, right? I think 5,000-6,000 crore revenue and profitable.
Yeah.
It's the shining star in the Flipkart group, right? From a growth as well as profitability perspective. So clearly, and they cater to more tier 1 India. I think Flipkart caters to a lot more tier 2. So tier 1, I think AOVs are higher, convenience. They're the only ones who's launched 30-minute apparel now. They're in fact launching, I'm hearing 30-minute beauty personal care as well.
Yeah.
So would be interesting to understand what is Vishal Mega Mart doing for the tier 2 India where, because I don't know if you guys saw this, there is a 15-minute or 30-minute delivery service grocery for tier 2 India also that got funded. It only does tier 2, tier 3 cities. 30-minute FMCG grocery delivery. I forgot the name of the company, but I read in the news sometime between. And if you see Blinkit's expanding to every tier 2, tier 3 city, you can't put 1,000 dark stores in only tier 1 cities. So would be interesting to see. I have not seen the numbers. If you have something, would be great to see what's happening year on year, quarter on quarter. And what is their product mix? I mean, even in...
I'll show you some
Yeah,
interesting...
I think on Vishal Mega Mart, right? I think we should come to that. I think the one thing for us, at least what we realize is, one is it's got a tier 2, it's got, I think, 700, 800 stores now in tier 2. Payback period for the stores is now coming back. But very interestingly, 45% and maybe slightly higher is now apparel. Okay.
Let me Shantanu take you through all the data. I think that's why I wanted to set this up, that we are all keep looking at India 1.0.1 companies. This is a company which is a little bit of on the other side
India
and has a massive scale, right? Just for context, they're trending 10,000 crores of revenue.
Yes.
Right. It's not, I was just doing broad maths. If India retail is 850 billion, organized retail out of that will be 12-15%. So 120 billion. They are 1% of that market. Right? If you think about it, they are 1% of India's organized retail, and they are a primarily tier 2, tier 3 player. It's fantastic. While we run startups and we keep figuring out premiumization play, let's go out and serve India 1. I think there is a lot of juice here, which some of the, it's of course a hard business to build. It's a very different DNA. We'll go into details, but this is what I found fascinating here. Another interesting thing, I think, this business runs in the bloods of this Agarwal family. The Vishal Mega Mart is not the only listed company from the family. So the history is that in 2011, the promoter sold the company to TPG, and then TPG sold to Kedara. Promoter started another company later on called V2 Retail, which is already listed, is now 5,500 crores market cap. And there's another cousin of his who used to work in the same company, Vishal Mega Mart, who started V-Mart. That's also listed, and that's 7,500 crores. So total, the Vishal group or Vishal family today is 50,000 plus these two companies, so looking like 65,000 crores. Right? But so clearly they know the tricks of the trade. All of them are doing this tier 2 value retailing, fashion heavy business, which is a 4-5% PAT business. But I think it's just phenomenal. How could we miss such companies?
But interestingly on this one, right, and you touched upon this before, and we can come to it later also. So Ram Agarwal, who built this out very slowly and steadily because of 2008 recession, this, that. He sold the company for 70 crores to TPG and Shriram Group. Okay, in 2011. TPG and Shriram Group must have professionalized it, gotten in Mr. Kapoor, all of that from 2011 till they sold it to Kedara in 2018 for 2,300 odd crores. So 70 crores to 2,300 crores, and that 2,300 crores which Kedara and Partners Group kind of bought it for, or majority for, is now 50,000 crores. So this is value accretion, which is private equity, kind of controlled private equity level and professionalization of what is clearly a very heavy tier 2 tier 3 business, which is commendable. So it's very cool to see this happen in a way that, for example, DMart has been totally the opposite, right? Very promoter driven, and continues to be, but
Yeah. Let's go through some of these numbers quickly. This is last year 9,000 crores of revenue, now trending 10,000 crores plus in FY25. From a gross profit point of view, and look at the growth. It's like 60% growth over the last 2 years, which has happened in a business which is predominantly or like 100% offline, and is dependent on growth in that sector as well as new stores coming up. We'll come to understanding this kind of business in detail. Look at gross profit. I think gross profit is around 27-28%, quite steady. And steadily, as revenue is scaling, that's like continues to be onward on a good path. EBITDA margins, 14 odd percent, stable. Looks like an efficient supply chain in place, efficient, store operations in place, which is there. And the most, I think, fascinating is, while the numbers from PAT point of view have moved from 4 to 5%, look at the absolute amount. 2,000 crores of profit has become 4,600 crores profit. I think this year they're going to end around 52, 5,300 crores of profit, right? So, I was just doing broad maths from a ROCE point of view. This is like a 50% plus business. Fantastic.
461 है ना?
Sorry, 461
INR million है ये.
Yeah,
So
461.
this will be 500 crores plus of profit this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So 100x PAT पे चल रहा है basically. So it's, I think, trading for future profit.
Yeah, and just more context so that these numbers become real. DMart is of course higher in terms of revenue. Let's say Jubilant Foodworks is around 5,000 crores revenue.
Yeah.
Right. So just for context, Page Industries is 5,000 crores revenue.
But branded revenue.
What's your sense? My sense is India has less than 200 companies which are greater than 50,000 crore market cap. Right. So it's like in my view, it's like a crown jewel company. It might not be the TCSs of the world, but I think it's a fantastic business.
Yeah.
इसका कुछ breakup है क्या? I agree, but it's interesting that because we don't spend that much time in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, we don't know what's happening there. Would be interesting to know इसका breakup क्या है? Like ये 10,000 crore का revenue में क्या बेच रहे हैं? Electronics बेच रहे हैं, fashion बेच रहे हैं.
So this is how it compares. What Revant, you were asking, sales mix. So this is a business which is heavy on apparel, but has a mix of FMCG and general merchandise. I think it's a good slide to understand, good chart to understand the retail business. That are you heavy on discretionary versus non-discretionary? And I think another axis is, do you have private labels?
What is general merch?
General merchandise is like more houseware stuff, not the FMCG stuff.
Kitchenware, electronics, stuff like that.
If you look at both V2, उनका तीनों business, V2 Retail, V-Mart और Vishal Mega Mart, they seem to be the only ones who are doing general merch, which is more.
Correct.
Could also be वो ना वो बर्तन, झाड़ू, ये सब चीजें भी general merch में आता होगा ऐसे.
वो रहता है usually DMart में.
But doesn't seem to be a large part of. Maybe that goes in. I don't know what goes in FMCG.
Look at DMart. DMart is 80% of the business is FMCG.
And out of 80%, 60% is food.
Yeah.
So वहाँ पे भी there is a significant
it starts
food.
to reflect in their this also. I have a comparison thing wherein it starts to show in their margin profile also. So from a gross margin perspective, they are very different businesses. Right. Look at Trend, which is now which has Zudio. That's 82% fashion.
I thought it should be 90-100%. और क्या बेचते हैं फैशन छोड़ के?
For a surprise, I have never been to a Zudio.
I actually have, and that is one thing I am pretty proud of. That Thane में एक store था. I didn't know it's so big. This was like 5-6 years back. So when Arnav was young, वो होता ना बहुत 6-6 महीने में कपड़े छोटे हो जाते हैं. तो we would be like कि यार इतने महंगे महंगे कपड़े क्यों ले रहे हैं? And Aarti told me that this is a cool place. You know यहाँ पे 300 रुपए में मिलता है करके. I'm like बहुत बढ़िया यार. तो वही लेते हैं करके. It was very close to the house. Like घर के नीचे ही types था. So that's when I first discovered Zudio. Pretty interesting. But I've never seen anything beyond apparel there. Anyway, I think let's continue on the Vishal.
Yeah, from a growth perspective, of course, you know, revenue wise, as I said, that they're closer to 10,000 crores. I think Zudio is still 5,000 crore, close to 5,000 crores this year. You compare this to a DMart. DMart is close to 50,000 crores in terms of revenue. From a growth perspective, I think except Zudio, which is like killing it, and hence Trent is like upward of 50%. I think all of them seem to be growing like 20 odd percent. And what is a little bit more fascinating here is, while you know we discussed this, that there is this economy slowdown. We looked at some companies like, you know, Barbecue Nation, Jubilant, which are not doing their same store sales growth is not growing, etc. This segment seems to be doing really well. Like, you know, and if we go a little bit ahead, you look at same store sales growth of Vishal Mega Mart. It's the revenue is growing at overall growing at 26%. Same store sales growth is also growing 14%, and they open like 50-55 stores every year, right? So something is happening which you know, we should probably deep dive that what are we seeing in terms of growth. Or is there a muted growth, or is there a partial subsector muted growth which is happening, because this sector seems to be doing well. I think what is interesting here is
when there is narrative about rural consumption slowing down, जो ये FMCG companies 1-1.5 साल से दे रही है, वो rural T2, T3, is it beyond T3 and beyond, or does that cover T2 as well? Because this seems to be bucking that trend, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's apparel, which is consumption, it's discretionary consumption, right, or grocery. तो T2, T3 में तो ठीक चल रहा है इनके हिसाब से, because
correct.
If you take, तो where is
all
the
these
gap?
companies, look at all these companies. All of them are 30%, around 30% growth, except Zudio, of course, which is higher, but all of them seem to be growing.
I'm focusing on same store sales growth, right? But because forget the store expansion, but a same store sales growth of 10% also, in my view, at least is growth. Yeah. Whereas when the FMCG companies come and say our volume growth is 2%, because rural consumption has slowed down, so कहीं match नहीं हो रहा है. Maybe that's only because DMart, but even DMart is 9% same store. Or are they sort of shifting from grocery to discretionary spends like apparel?
The
first
first 4 rows is definitely apparel first. Also, what is happening with Vishal, and one thing which we should filter here is 70% of their revenue comes from their own brands. So that is a huge differentiator from a retailer standpoint. 70% from own brands is a big one.
But that's for margin, no, Shantanu. I agree, that's a great thing, but that will drive more margin, right? Why would that drive?
You see that in the margin profile, yeah.
Like there is one hypothesis I have, which is a very lazy hypothesis, if I can call it, कि as Instagram has gone from 150 million to 600 million people, I mean, looking good is, I mean, clearly, see, I'm changing my shirt every ASYMMETRIC podcast, so I need, no, seriously, just look at the content.
Clearly is not on Instagram then, he's only on LinkedIn.
No, but think about it, right? Like there is a growing trend of people now being visible in the public domain a lot more than before. Is that driving more apparel consumption? Because if these guys are all apparel first, and लोग बोल रहे हैं कि भाई तेल साबुन कम ले रहे हैं tier 2 tier 3 में, but कपड़े ज़्यादा खरीद रहे हैं.
आपको idea है? No, Revant, have you spoken to a 20-25-year-old kid today about how they buy fashion, how they buy clothes? How do 3 of us buy clothes? 3 of us buy clothes की कितना चलेगा, लंबा चलेगा, durable, quality, ये सब ना, इनको कोई घंटा नहीं फर्क पड़ता. They only want designs. So regular fashion agnostic children also, young people in the office, are buying shirts and trousers की how many washes, number of washes, 8 washes, 10 washes, 5 washes. right? They're buying kitne, like, so if they know it's a 5 wash apparel piece, they know कि ये 2 महीने चलना है. So frequency of purchasing is significantly increasing. AOV might be reducing because they're not buying for quality, and frankly, that's where some of this comes up, because then the complexity increases, because now the business kind of has cycles that are very, very short. You don't have like a season anymore. You have sometimes weeks and months, and that's pretty much it.
I think another, interesting thing for us to see is their average order value is not like as high, or they're half of DMart. I was just doing with their, 10,000 crores of sales. If you take average order value of 1,000 rupees, looks like they do 100 million transactions in a year. And we can do like some guess estimate that people are going to shop 4 times in a year on this kind of a retailer. So that's looks like 25 million unique users are shopping every year on Vishal Mega Mart. Isn't that a crazy number?
Yeah, 99.5% of it is, by the way, completely offline. So they've started their e-commerce online stuff, but that is like under 0.5%. So this is all people going into a store and buying.
So DMart, in spite of high grocery being high AOV, is because of loading up. कि तुम 1 महीने जा रहे हो और सब कुछ साथ में खरीद रहे हो करके.
Yeah.
That is the
Even that
assumption.
reflects in the gross margin. Look at their gross margin. So they will of course have higher revenue per square feet, lower gross margin, but because they are very like staples, heavy play. I think that's why understanding retail business is interesting from a point of view, or that how much mix you have of discretionary versus staples, and then how much percentage is private labels. Look at this right side bottom graph, which is about percentage private label in all of these value retailers. Vishal Mega Mart is, as Shantanu was saying, 70% is private labels. That is the real differentiator. And in my view, it's a hard business. 1,000 rupee AOV, you have to do private label, you have to be super efficient in terms of supply chain, demand forecasting, because this is not FMCG where you have limited SKUs. This is like fashion prediction. And then I was reading somewhere that they follow this Maggie philosophy, wherein Maggie prices haven't gone up. Of course, the grammage has gone down, but they continue to have a T-shirt offering at $99. So they have acquisition hooks, and then they use that to, it's very interesting that they have fashion on the ground floor, they have FMCG on the first floor, and then they have the other third category general merchandise on the second floor. That's how typically their stores are designed. So higher gross margin items on the ground floor, and then gross margin reduces, staples increase as you go up.
This is hard. By the way, 99 rupee shirt, t-shirt, and 799 rupee jeans. I think these are the two things that they have really disrupted from a cart standpoint. And but the good part of the apparel is that the majority of the value in the supply chain actually happens post COGS. So there's 90% of value in the post COGS zone, which is where you can see it happening in their gross margin. Also, almost double of DMart is because A to private label hai, so they are not trading the business beyond the point.
I remember speaking to someone at one of their promoters long back. He was telling me that their in-store conversion is around 75%. So if 100 people come to the store, 75 end up shopping. I don't know.
What is the equivalent for a DMart?
DMart also would be like pretty much higher. DMart में घुसने के लिए you need to have strong intent.
Another good thing about apparel, and this is something that people may kind of gloss over a little bit, is pilferage in apparel probably is a lot lower. It's harder to do pilferage in apparel compared to staples. So, for example, even categories like ghee have 1 to 1.5% pilferage. So people come in and they hide up to 1 kilo of ghee under their clothes and they walk out of a store, which will be difficult to do in apparel because it's just a harder product to pick up and
you can't wear.
I would assume easy होगा पहन के जाना है.
Unlikely.
They don't have these, जैसे अपने Shopper Stop and all these other stores have these detectors and stuff like that.
It
वो सब
doesn't
90
work.
because 99 रुपी शर्ट में तुम क्या ही
अरे वो
cost of
आप
applying that would be bigger.
आप कभी वो मुलुंड के डीमार्ट या रिलायंस रिटेल में जाना, देर आर रफली 50 to 60 पीपल वॉकिंग आउट पर मिनट. वो बजेगा टीटी टीटी करता रहता है. हु लाइक दे हैव, हाउ विल यू कैच व्हाट इज हैपनिंग देयर? सो दैट RFID प्रोटेक्शन इज काइंड ऑफ, it doesn't work. Like it's a part of their cost. Like this is cost. Pilferage cost is part of cost. They bake it into the margin structure they negotiate with the brands.
But यार डीमार्ट के इस स्केल पे 50,000 करोड़ के स्केल पे तो बोल रहा है 1% पिल्फरेज होता होगा. It's like, but if 80% is grocery, I'm saying
Yeah. 1 to 2% pilferage cost है उनका in general across.
what are you saying? 500 crores they lose on pilferage.
Yes. Wow. Yes.
यार
Easy. Why do you think Gillette locks up its razors? Locker में रखते हैं यार वो. There it's in lock. At
people
the
just अच्छा हो because you can actually stuff it down your
very,
pants and
it's
keep
very easy. छोटू things which are high value are the easiest. So batteries, Mark 3 and fusion blades, ये सब तो बहुत ही important to kind of protect.
I think interesting why
different
we have
level
seen.
problems discuss कर रहे हैं हम. मतलब ये
हाँ,
I don't think the mutual fund guys have gone and looked at you know
They have
Vishal
looked at
Mega Mart
revenue
में
per
क्या
square
lock
feet, pat, and
हाँ.
said this is a great business. But I think we should, Revant, would love to get your views. And I haven't seen a lot of these private equity run companies go IPO at such a scale. I've seen, I think Vinny also, Vinny Cosmetics got acquired by a private equity, but it's still not listed, right? How does, we of course have had this view, or maybe we are bounded by our own conditioning that founder mindset, founder run companies, Zomato is doing well, etc., and here we are, this is on the other side. What is your sense that are we will we see more of this, private equity companies do this, or what is it different?
I think so this has happened in the West a lot before, and I think it used to happen in India, not at this scale, where you would have professionals being bought in to run a company, where a private equity owns majority and a professional management team has ESOPs between 5 to 10% or equity between 5 to 10%, and they're incentivized to take the company 4x, 5x and earn the upside as well because they have equity. This has been happening in India quite a lot. But you're right that not a lot of these companies have gone IPO. Usually they switch from one private equity owner to another private equity owner. And the entrepreneurs or the management team keeps getting maybe some liquidity in between. But it's hard to keep someone excited for 10 years without taking the company public. I could argue DMart is an example of, a professionally run company while everybody keeps crediting.
But I think that's day one
Mr.
professional.
for it.
It's day one.
Correct.
Like that. It's day one.
Correct.
Like that. It's
Right.
not
So-
like day one, founders logged and then did the initial PMF, ran for 4-5 years
Correct.
and then gave it. It
Correct.
was day one.
So this
concept.
happens a lot. Yeah, this happens a lot in lending, for example, because lending is a very precise science, and there are professionals who have done lending in NBFCs and banks, and there could be a lot of private equity players who will start a lending company with a professional team on board on day one. Very hard to do in retail. I think very, very hard to do in consumer brands, consumer tech. This largely happens in financial services, which is anyway the largest portion of our GDP in some sense. But you are right again that not a lot of them have gone IPO. Or maybe
In fact,
we have
in
not.
brands also, haven't people tried doing this in some other avatar where there was a founder, not a private equity, wherein Mensa brand tried to acquire brands, built out a financial leverage type of a business. Of course, that's far from IPO. But
I think it will go. From what I'm hearing, the company is now at about 2,000 crore revenue, and mostly in a year or two they'll go IPO. I think it's harder in brands because brands are built with emotion. See, brands are a very purpose-driven initiative, and usually it's the founder's purpose or passion that really comes out to build brands, right? And authenticity only comes from there. It's very hard to build brands with a cutthroat professional mindset. But lending that way is As I said, art versus science में, the more you go towards science, कि यार underwriting skills होनी चाहिए, कैसे आपको collections करना है, किस base को lend करना है, नहीं करना है, insurance in some way can be done that way. So a lot of the, if I can call it, for lack of a better word, financial engineering, objective thought process professionals can be backed, I think, by PE players and to go for this. I think retail is very hard. So what the management team here has done, and I think Shantanu has a little bit better understanding of how the private equity players in this case actually got a solid operating team to create all of these outcomes, because it's very hard for PE guys to influence this apart from getting the best management team in that sense, right? And while they watch the numbers like a hawk, in the end, a lot of this boils down to have you got the best CEO, CBO, sales guy, etc., right? Yeah. Much harder to do in retail, so makes this journey even more commendable. I've seen this in lending, I've seen this in financial services. Very rare to see this in retail as such. So that way, pretty commendable. And I'm hoping that this will happen a lot more now, because the talent density, I think, see, we were also in our early stages of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. If you see the last 10, 20 years, first go back 20 years, right? It was not sexy to start out a company. It was not sexy to work at a startup. So people did the cookie cutter jobs where, oh, if you're at Unilever, if you are at, I'll use Shantanu's favorite word, McKinsey, then you are essentially, in that straight line. In the last 20 years, we have now seen a lot of professionals learn how to operate with scarcity mindset, learn to operate with constraints, learn to create a large amount of impact. And usme bhi there are a lot of ups and downs, right? There is noise and signal. Noise is basically Zerpera startups that everyone believed would create value but couldn't, and therefore the learnings in those startups for operators may not have been the best. So as that ecosystem of operators is evolving, I think PE firms are also getting a lot more deeper expertise on people who have built out companies this way, and you will see more and more companies now maybe going for this. One trend, for example, is how venture capitalists have caught on to this by saying, if you are a senior operator or a second time founder, then there is a large pool of capital where they are backing the founder in some ways and that idea. And a lot of these are very traditional businesses, which just may not have a winner take all, but one more player may have one unique wedge to get in and build something like that, right? So Dale was who was CTO at Swiggy, maybe be building in wealth tech. There are 20 wealth tech companies, but it's such a large growing market that, one more wealth tech company can do well, right? So there's no reason why they would not back it. And I think this will happen more and more as the ecosystem deepens, if you ask me.
No, I think also this is a classic example of how the private equity operator-driven professionalizing of companies and then value creation, which is then shared, is played out. So, for example, the example we gave of DMart, right? Mr. Damani got Damodar Mal, Neville, etc., a bunch of Unilever mid-managers to kind of come and build out DMart. Neville stayed on, and of course is now known as the first billionaire who's a professional CEO and not the founder, right? And that's a very well documented story. Even in this case, there was someone who was 23, 24 years at Unilever, then was CEO of Reliance Retail. And Mr. Kapoor is now one of the most respected retail gurus in the country. And think about it, he was an advisor at TPG, became CEO of Vishal Mega Mart, which was bought for 70 crores in a distress situation. So to imagine what a 70 crore asset post 2009 would look like for him to, at the 27, 28 year point in his career after being CEO of Reliance Retail, to take on. So he calls himself on LinkedIn also investor CEO. So he's also possibly put in significant amount of capital, which is personal in nature, along with TPG and Shriram Group, bought the business and then has run it for the last 14 years. And now his position, this is, we don't know, but people call him the $150 million man. So 1,000 crore ka position personally, which is, in my view, something which is like kind of a quasi investor, founder, CEO. I think he's all three in one, right? And that value that he's created for himself reflects the value that he's created, a 50,000 crore company, taken it from TPG Shriram Group, then working with Kedara and Partners Group, and now with the public. it's good that operators like him are like kind of like becoming a part of the value pool and not just founders and investors.
And just for viewers, how much would it be fair to say that private equity guys would be looking at doing a 3x in 5 years
Yes.
with like very, very good certainty?
Yes.
And also, okay, and also while we were talking about sectors, I think I do get that financial services where it's less emotion. I think that's one sector. Do you think about it should happen in real estate, infrastructure also, where globally it has happened? But I don't know if in India there's a. I think groups also do it. Like Godrej Group has enough, backing and to do this on their own. But
P's, I think, tried it. If you go back to 2008 to 12, most PE firms used to largely do power and infra. In fact, most of their portfolio. अभी आप जाओगे तो वेबसाइट पे आपको दिखेगा नहीं वो portfolio, but like even a venture, like I remember talking to Avnish, which is Z47 today, it used to be Matrix. First fund was largely power and infra. Very traditional businesses, retail, power, infra. There were a lot of PE funds that shut shop by 2014-15 with their 10-year fund cycle because the 2005-6 vintage largely would do power and infra. Was an abysmal, mostly negative IRR returns for most funds. Some corporate governance issues, some policy changes, but overall I think this used to happen and I don't think people want to touch that with a tent pole now, that sector. I don't know, maybe there are some ballsy Ps out there who still do it, but I largely see retail and FS, which is 60-70% of GDP anyway for us, right? It's maybe a safer way to stay in the lane and there's enough pools of capital to back, enough entrepreneurs to leverage this pool of capital and sort of build out in these two sectors.
Yeah. Blackstone over a period of time was at one point, I don't know but now, but was at one point at a square footage level, Blackstone was the number 2 real estate company in the country.
Still would be, no?
Ab pata nahi, I have not seen it recently, but I think till COVID.
RE to alag hi market hai. I think, RE also has enough policy governance question marks, but I think funds who do RE really know how to do RE.
Yeah.
I mean, they, I'm sure, shape policy in RE, if not anything, right? So, and RE as a growing economy, real estate, I don't see a way where they will let go of they would definitely play that sector. And there are different ways to create, it's in some way, again, more little bit of emotion, but I think the science has been perfected by a level by all these large PE guys there.
But how about, let's say we zoom in on the startup sector, wherein we have seen Warburg Pincus invest in Boat. Yeah. I think they own significant stake, and Chris Capital owns in Wow Skin Science, right? So it started to happen, and I don't know, has this worked out? It's still early days. Like I think Boat is still 3 years into the investment. Maybe Wow Skin Science is more. But I think some of these exits, and by the way, both are brand businesses. So
I have a view on this where I think brands need founder passion. Yeah. Without that, I really.
But Revant, would you say that even at scale, Boat was doing 4,000 crores of revenue? So it's pretty much the brand has been built out unless we say founder is the brand. In Aman's case, we can say that.
Back. Yeah, Aman's case, you can say that founder is the brand. But I think even if founder is not the brand, I think 2-3 episodes back I had mentioned this. The pace of change of human psychological behavior, like look at what is happening. Every 10 साल में behavior change होता था. फिर अगले every 5 साल में होने लगा. अब यार Insta algo change होता है, behavior change हो जाता है. Because Insta algo change होने पे you are now suddenly seeing everybody starts feeding you something different and you are trying sort of shaping behavior for the youth in India. So what people wanted in a wearable or a headphone or a earphone 5 years back has changed very drastically. So you need to be nimble-footed to not only look at innovation, but also nimble-footed in terms of how do you sort of keep playing for adjacencies in a brand. Now the brand can always stand for one thing.
Maybe
but you
maybe
need to
then
cater
Revant,
to-
it takes us to that question of that, can private equity teams build out these agile teams for today? Right? If that's the need
Correct.
of the hour,
That's
leave,
the
leave
bigger
outside
question.
brand. Yeah. Is it possible which founders are able to do that, keep very tuned to what is happening every 3 months and then keep changing? Maybe that's become our like first nature. But are these people professionally, can they be brought professionally into a team and then asked to run a company in a very agile, nimble way, wherein, you build these product development capabilities, media consumption capabilities, which keep changing?
I have a very strong point of view on this. I think, for example, if you are able to, what makes successful founders work is there's a tremendous amount of competence. There is an incentive structure through equity that works, and then there is an ecosystem through capital, team, etc. That makes it happen. This trifecta of things is what makes founder-driven businesses. Now, Revant calls it the passion of founders, purpose of business, etc. What works over a period of time is this trifecta. I have a feeling that this trifecta is now being replicated by private equity and even some growth stage venture companies, which is you get in a professional management to solve for competence. Incentive structures through equity they're structuring it now a lot better, a lot more sharing and so on. And then there is long runway of capital. There is empowerment. There is now a lot lesser lala mindset in terms of once you have someone competent and you give them freedom, then you kind of step back and become enablers in a way. So I think a lot of private equity funds, at least the ones who have long views, and this has worked in the US and even China to a large extent, is they're trying to create what founders do in an artificial way with assets that they might have bought out, or like in the case of Vishal, in a distress situation. But they put these three things in, and then hopefully they try to see a value accretive situation. But I think it's very much possible, and I think good smart PE operators can actually do it well.
I think new age companies में थोड़ा hard लगता है, considering I don't think we set up new age companies with a very sorted structure. Like for example, when Unilever had to build over the last 50-100 years, they followed and they made some mistakes and they finalized the structure that has worked for them and they continue. So today when Unilever has to do a reorg, it happens once in 10 years.
Yeah.
Shantanu, me and you do a reorg every 1 year. कि अरे ये नहीं चल रहा है, चलो आगे पीछे कर लेते हैं करके.
Correct.
Exactly, Revant, यही challenge है ना कि if you think from a private equity guy, that professional pool which has spent 10 years in Unilever is available. But is there a large enough pool which is available? Most of them would ideally want to start up on their own, right? So that pool itself is limited. The underlying,
Pool is not limited. Pool is available, but they have a higher leverage with the existing venture ecosystem. Whereas E47 or a Lightspeed will come and say that I will give you 3 million to khud banana. Why do you want to go and somewhere and work on this? If that leverage pool is identified, right? That is one very clear thing.
But most people who have had 15-20 year careers, they don't like the 0 to 1 journey much. They want like a bigger canvas. Like that's what I've seen.
Absolutely. But see what's happened, right? Like Boat May, when the private equity player took over 40-50%, they got Mr. Vivek Gambhir who did fabulously for Godrej. But that was a very traditional setup. Now I don't know what didn't work, but clearly something didn't work, right? Where now I think Aman is back and Sameer is back in the driving seat. But at least Vivek, with the principles of being a good CEO, I'm sure he understands and he's done it well. And he's our advisor to Lightspeed, so I'm sure the Lightspeed is trying to leverage his expertise. He's an independent board director in a lot of late stage startups. So as an advisor and a coach, it may be a great thing. But if you have to be in the hot seat of the CEO, what the team is used to, I'm not saying that he didn't maybe understand how to run a company like Board, but the team is used to a certain style. Now, for you to change the entire culture of the org is going to take a lot of time. Yeah. And time is something we have a paucity of, considering how broken our organizations are half the time, right? Like, there are too many moving parts. So what 15-year professionals are used to is a very set process. So there was this very interesting saying, I learned this when limited time in VC. We had a few SaaS companies that we wanted to hire our first VP of sales. And the standard piece, you always find this, Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, अरे मुझको startup करना है, I'm getting redundant, I'm becoming a dinosaur. But I was told as a guidance that boss, don't approve any big company VP of sales because they are used to a certain process on how to generate cold leads, how to generate warm leads. उनको पता ही नहीं है वो सिस्टम चल रहा है. But startup में सब कुछ खुद करना पड़ता है, right? So even in a late stage startup, the processes are not fully defined. So for someone who's worked with processes and systems, to have the nuance to say that I will first take 2 years to build this process and systems out, while the PE guy is breathing down the neck कि भाई growth क्यों नहीं हो रही है करके. It's a super hard problem to
So
solve.
it's very difficult. So by the way, in Indian context, typically when a buyout happens, when private equity comes in, they typically don't want the founders around because there is like like
Which is fair.
Which is
But I'm
fine.
saying even then, the team is used to a certain way of operating. Now see, that's why I go back to what I said. Lending may, if even a startup, effectively a good startup in lending will follow the same principles as Bajaj Finance, यार.
correct.
कि किसको अंडरराइट करना है, कितना आपको लोन देना है, कलेक्शन मैकेनिज्म क्या है. I mean, you can't do it at the level where you are hounding with a call every 1 hour like Bajaj Finance does. But apart from that, everything else, a good startup in lending will follow the same principles, and therefore a professional can come in and say, I'll take this ahead करके.
Absolutely. So in a brand situation, for example, typically if you take over a brand where there is a disruptor founder there who's kind of crazy about how to innovate on a particular product, etc. If you have bought that company, typically if I were an investor who's bought, now I'm the promoter of that company, right? I would actually say, what worked for that 0 to 1, and Chirag says it nicely, right? Pioneer, scaler, factory owner. The pioneer now has to go because now you need a factory owner or a scaler there, right? Having a combination like for example, what Rohit and Sriharsha do at Swiggy, or what Kalyan and Sachin and Biri did at Flipkart, or what Eric Schmidt and Larry and Sergey did at Google. This requires a lot of thinking, structuring, who does what, very clear roles, a proper board. Only then will that combination of operator plus founder together will work. Otherwise, you typically replace and then you create value. And you give the new operator like Mr. Kapoor, or you see this a lot, you will give them full canvas. Ki boss, now ye company tumhari hai. Now you are the top dog. And its accountability is yours, and freedom is also yours. Otherwise, wo mix and match mein thoda fight ho jata hai.
Yeah, but I think we should look at what creates alpha, Shantanu. And in my view, if you look at any consumer first organization, like you use the example of Swiggy, or even a brand, let's say, उसमें ना मेजर अल्फा जो बहुत ही नॉन ऑब्जेक्टिव मेजरमेंट होता है, हाउ डू यू मेजर द ब्रांड, राइट? इन द एंड दैट्स व्हाई आई कीप टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट पैशन एंड पर्पस दैट ट्रांसलेट्स फ्रॉम द फाउंडर. और इवन फॉर अ कंज्यूमर टेक कंपनी, the product UI UX, like what is the consumer going to experience on the app, that I think still continues to be held by the founder.
Correct.
And I think operators now will operate. For you to assume that the operator will take a gut call कि यार कर लेते हैं, कस्टमर को अच्छा लगेगा, वो नहीं कर पाते क्योंकि they have been trained to operate with objective principles. And I think वो जो last alpha है ना, वो disappear होने लग जाता है if you have a professionally. And that's why see there is no, I mean, कुछ रेयर केसेस में होगा where you will find the operator who will generate that, but you will be able to break down a lot of things in a professionally run company कि यार X हो रहा है इसलिए Y हो रहा है, even if it is in hindsight. With brands, I'm telling you, trust me, even with hindsight, you will not be able to say कि why did this brand work. People have hypothesis कि ये founder ने अपना अच्छा personality बनाया या इनका packaging देखो cool है, but we are trying to just search for answers. Even the most shittiest packaging of great brands is saying क्या बढ़िया packaging है करके, right? वो होता है because it is just a personality, right? Some person has said यार मुझे ये पसंद है, मुझे ये करना है, and they have built an audience around it. You cannot explain that, and therefore professional operators. And this combination works as long as the core IP, which is either the product formulation or the consumer tech में जैसे mobile app UI UX है या brand में जो core messaging है, वो cannot be operated on.
Yeah,
by a
that is
professional.
baked out. Yeah, you're right. It has to be baked out before you take it to an operator and hand it over to an operator. Absolutely.
If we start looking at from what we discussed from this lens, I think it makes the company Vishal Megamart even more special.
Very.
It's not the norm. It's a rare thing that somebody professional came in, Mr. Kapoor came in and he built out the company over the last 10 years, and it's a fantastic outcome. Outside of the other against the norm things which they've done, organized retail in tier 2, tier 3, and maybe we should get there. That coupling the thought of agility with now quick commerce getting to tier 2, tier 3. What's the future outlook? how would these, let's say DMart, we have seen that they have said that we are going to double down on value retailing, which is our core offering. We are going to open more stores. That's our mantra to growth. That's what at least they've said in one of the early calls. And while Blinkit says that they are going to open 2,000 stores in the next 1 year, all of these guys, and some of them are going to be in tier 2, tier 3. So will it lead to, I think I have two maybe viewpoints here. Would love to get your views that how should as an entrepreneur think about this organized retail tier 2, tier 3 market. By the way, that's the segment which is going to grow fastest from a value point as well as from a percentage growth point. Size ही इतना बड़ा. How, and do you know any startups who are in this space? Who are attacking this space, tier 2, tier 3, organized retail, or brands which are doing tier 2, tier 3 targeting. All of us continue to discuss India 1, India 0.1, premiumization play, brands which are, worked in US, some localization, some form factor of, India version. But are you seeing any of those plays, or is this like a green space?
I mean, Meesho in some way was the last big guy to build for the tier 2, tier 3 market, right? And it's a phenomenal success now, if you see, with $1 billion plus revenue. And they continue to scale and they are profitable.
I think since you were on Meesho, this is how it looks. It serves the same segment, predominantly fashion. Revenue wise, of course, Meesho is catching up. It's much younger company. Valuation wise, listed at almost the similar range, but look at margin profiles and look at AOV. I keep wondering that what's the online equivalent of revenue per square feet? What is the online equivalent of like a Meesho, which is a true marketplace? What is their revenue per square feet equivalent metric?
Very good question. That's a very good question.
You should try and get Vidit on the call on this, and then maybe he can tell us. But I was just looking at this company called Rosanna. I was seeing kuch to seems like operating for tier 2, tier 3 markets, Fireside, Bertelsmann, etc. And they're talking about largely setting up the infrastructure, warehousing, logistics, etc. for tier 2, tier 3 to do grocery for those markets. Is that the correct understanding?
And is that quick commerce?
I think पहले quick com नहीं था. Extremely tier 3, not even tier 2. So tier 3, let me find more. But I think recently maybe somewhere I read that they are trying to do quick com also.
I am Lucknow founder, very, very purpose driven.
Sorry, क्या बोल रहा है?
I was just wondering, is Numi primarily targeting tier 2, tier 3? I know that they've opened stores in Bangalore, in Gurgaon, but are they going after the tier 2, tier 3 segment? And they have a lot of these offline stores, so Shantanu, unke liye to revenue per square feet hoga hi.
My hypothesis on your initial two viewpoints, I agree with your first viewpoint. On the second viewpoint, right, which is tier 2, tier 3 India, I think the Vishal story is more a aspiration story for tier 2, tier 3 India, which manifests itself in the apparel and private label category a lot more than it does in the organized retail category. So I think if you think about startups that are catering to tier 2, tier 3 India, I am not in the order of let's say FMCG or quick commerce or apparel. I would actually say the third, which is apparel, is where a lot of the value unlock will happen for tier 2, tier 3 India. So for entrepreneurs who are able to create, massive styling, tremendous amount of, pricing innovations, design innovations, speed and agility in taking it to tier 2, tier 3 India, etc. I think that's where I think the Vishal story kind of points in that direction a lot more than to say,
But Shantanu, haven't we seen on the other side? Even I was thinking about brand play also, and I have heard him on your podcast only. That the paid Safa guy, I think, how much is that? That's 200 crore brand?
Peter, now
तो revenue brand
मैंने उनको
350
पूछा आप कितना धन, how big is your company? He said 60 crore. How big is your brand? How big is Case King or Paid Sapphire? He said around 60 crores. I said 60 crores? I thought इससे बड़ा होगा. I had heard कि it's bigger. He's like हाँ इतना ही पैट होता है. अरे पैट नहीं. पैट नहीं. रेवेन्यू कितना है? बोलते रेवेन्यू नहीं पता. रेवेन्यू देख के बताना पड़ेगा. पैट इतना है. तो नहीं, that's
I'm
around I
saying,
think.
no, but then doesn't it mean that tier 2, tier 3 mein the opportunities are very different, right? In tier 1, people are focusing on athleisure and these very different plays. But somebody needs to look at it from tier 2, tier 3 lens. Opportunity, in my view, वहाँ पर भी है.
100%.
We don't need to create those alpha super premium brands for them, but very functional, use case heavy, those kind of brands.
100%. It's a underserved market which is aspirational. So 100% there will be opportunities, not just in retail but more I think in categories and brand
But
building.
are you seeing then, you guys do a lot of this angel investments. Are you guys seeing inflow of such companies, or is everyone just focusing on premiumization because that's just, just for comparison, Page Industries is almost similar in terms of market cap. They are much less in terms of revenue. They're 5,000 crore revenue, much higher in terms of gross margin. Clearly serves the premium segment. They have Jockey and Speedo as two franchises. So it's a fantastic business, but that serves more tier 1. It's a different way of building the business. We look up to those businesses, but I think there is clearly value, large segment which can be served in tier 2, tier 3. I'm surprised that we are not seeing startups in that group.
I think a lot of venture funded founders don't belong to don't belong to that consumer group. So that's why I think it might take some time, but it's a matter of time before people realize that there is value there to be created. But why, if you're not
Easiest underwriting in India is when the VC is the consumer. Like how much ever we assume we are all intelligent and smart, there is an obvious bias कि अच्छा हाँ यार मेरे अराउंड मेरे को ये दिख रहा है तो ये पक्का बनेगा करके. So वो bias तो बहुत clear है. You are right कि if you get like I really enjoy reading the tweets of this guy who runs Bharat Agri, I think, who they have an app for how to increase the yield for the crop for farmers. And it's such an interesting company. And I don't think they had a lot of GMV, but then what they started doing is unke app pe they started selling the products as well, the fertilizers and stuff like that. I think they're doing very, very well from what I see. But it's such an interesting problem statement, right? मतलब इतना बड़ा sector है, but there's no news about it. कोई ऐसे पेपर में नहीं आ रहा कि भारत एग्री
कोई fight नहीं है. India 1 में everyone is fighting with each other,
Actually, I realized the other thing. Maybe there is more margin. Yeah, there is more margin in India 2, India 3 because सब India 1 में लगे हुए हैं. तुम India 3 जाके बनाओ, शांति से पैसा बनाओ करके.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very happy about Gokesh winning. So that's one big one. I think 18-year-old world champion. Just so happy to see. Second, I think both teams tried to make a match out of it before bad light happened, which Test cricket is just amazing, right? Australia came out to kind of hit it out of the park and try to put a total and bowl India out. And you could see from the body language of the Indian cricketers, after a few wickets, you're like, we can actually go for the win. I was expecting KL Rahul and Rishabh Pant to come and open and go for the win. But they are the two things that, again, for me, in India, really dominating sports is a very good lead indicator to India dominating in markets and other places.
On cricket, just wondering, whether Bumrah and Akash saved us or rain gods.
Rain, very clearly rain. I mean, it rained 2 days of the test match got rained out, moti. 180 overs got rained out.
But Revant, think about it, that, if Akashdeep would have got out on the 4th day, India would have still needed 30-35 overs, still were bowled. Because follow on ho jata. 35 overs, it's like then result was possible. Not in our favor.
हमारे देश में ना एक ही रीजन है जहाँ पे पैसा आता रहेगा और एंटरप्रेन्योर्स ऐसे ही खुश रहेंगे कि यार बनाते हैं because we are all hopeful कि भाई हम तो एकदम सही है बस बारिश नहीं आती ना तो बस हम ही एकदम बस पहुंच ही गए थे
नहीं मैं तो उल्टा बोल रहा हूँ मैं बोल रहा हूँ हार जाते हैं
वो तो हारते ही हो तो पक्का
यार we got saved by
35 overs में 10 आउट हो जाते हैं
I think, but Bumrah Akash partnership was amazing. I think sentimentality of the motivation of the team, I think, which will carry on to the next test match. Second is, I think the Steve Smith dropped catch of KL Rahul. That was a huge one. I think we would have followed
I have
on.
a
ये
before,
शांतनु ये भी
before
वैसे
the,
वो है कि मोमेंटम इज इन आवर फेवर नाउ लेट्स कैरी द मोमेंटम ये भी थोड़ा होपफुल वाला सीन है
I have a for the new year for you guys. At the end of the 5th test, who retires, Rohit or Virat? One of them will have to put up their boots.
It depends. If we are 3-1, then no one is retiring. But I think on retirement, we should. Of course, Ashwin announced his retirement yesterday. So
Brand
Why did
ambassador.
you do it in the middle of the series? Why not?
I
till
think
wait till
after
the end?
Jadeja played well, it became quite clear that he's not going to play.
But यार मतलब ये तो ठीक है ना फिर
Yeah,
भी
he
रुक
could have
जाता
waited.
दो-
Yeah, he could
Yeah.
have waited.
At least he could have said that at the end of the series I'll retire. Maybe I'll not play. Or maybe he could have waited. अच्छा पता नहीं वो थोड़ा ईगो पे ले लेते हैं ये लोग पता नहीं.
Yeah, Ashwin has also had a
उसने
tough
बोला होगा
time.
कि
Last 5-6
year-end
years.
को- Correct.
He'll be the number one test bowler in the world and not be in the India squad. That has happened with him multiple times. ICC rank 1 and on the bench. On like spinning tracks. ये वो बहुत हुआ है उनके साथ. So
But I'm saying that see I met him actually at one of the events and a pretty cool guy, right? Very sorted, very objective.
Very
In
intelligent.
fact, he was technically semi-retired. That's why he was doing events, and then he got called up out of the blue, right? कि नहीं यार मतलब we need you.
Spinner.
ठीक है, maybe his way, but I really like it when people get a good farewell, yeah.
he should have played in India his last match. I feel like
Yeah.
think about it. 537 wickets at an average of 24. But my favorite stat about him, he's the fastest ever to get to 400 test wickets. But he has 6 test hundreds, yaar. People underestimate that he's a damn good batsman. 6 test hundreds.
मेरा फेवरेट मेमोरी तो उसका वही वाला है वो अपना इंडिया पाकिस्तान ही हिट ना
He left the white ball first.
yeah MCG वाला
First left the white ball. Oh my goodness, that was crazy. The leaving the white ball was like a pro batsman skill.
वो थोड़ा है आई थिंक ही इज अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ दैट साइंटिस्ट एवर थिंकिंग
Intelligent.
कैरेक्टर है हाँ.
वो साउथ इंडियन इंजीनियर प्लेइंग क्रिकेट वो अनिल कुंबले के साथ भी देखा था अपन ने लाइक वेरी वेरी अनिल कुंबले द्राविड अश्विन वेरी इंटेलिजेंट क्रिकेटर्स वेरी
Are you
इंटेलिजेंट
saying Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli are not intelligent cricketers?
I think the intellect is made up by like pure skills a lot more and these guys are very tactically much smart. So I think for example Ashwin will make 100x better coach than a Virat or Rohit if they all go into coaching 100x. You're seeing it with Gautam Gambhir also na lots of aggression and passion tactically very poor like बहुत ही मतलब very randomly poor tactical
Yeah,
cricket
even on your question of who goes out, I think Gautam might go out.
100%.
नहीं यार. नहीं यार. They just appointed him. They'll give him at least a year. There is.
But he should have been out after the New Zealand situation, yaar.
Great guys. Have a good weekend, and to our audience as well. Hopefully, have a good holiday season.
Yes, see you guys in 2025. Revant, Chirag, have a great time, and everyone watching Asymmetric. One thing which we would love for you to do is we are not promoting the podcast. We are genuinely thinking that people who are truly interested in second order insights, education, etc., come and watch. So if you know people who would appreciate this, please share it with them. Also, do put in the comments on what more you would like us to cover. We typically pick up 1 or 2 things every week. This is not Revant, Chirag or my full-time job, so this is something that we take time out to do. So any help from people who are viewing with certain amount of passion will be super awesome. But everyone who's dropped in messages appreciating, I think you should know that Revant, Chirag and I take screenshots of all the comments and send it to each other and feel good about our investment in Asymmetric. So thank you for that and keep them coming.